I'm about.
We have more people online watching than we
Get back.
Okay.
I'm about teaching our kids how to learn the line cursive. Read a clock.
Some of the questions will come from people online.
Oh, okay.
Right. You don't know how to fill out an envelope. You can't even count envelopes. If I don't plug your wife.
Good morning. We need to go ahead and get started. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Welcome to the Sarah Stevenson Tuesday morning forum. My name is Mary Johnson. I will be facilitating this morning. We have Charlotte Mecklenburg School System candidates at large. Okay, we always start out with a prayer, so I'm going to ask Ms. Aretha to give us a prayer.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Let's bow our heads and do the Lord's Prayer this morning. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever. Amen. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any first timers here? Oh, great. Okay. We always like our first timers to stand and introduce themselves.
Miss.
Hello everyone, my name is Naz Isafu. This is my first time, however I am familiar with the Tuesday morning forum. I have a friend, her name is Congresswoman Martha Alexander, who told me about it. And she said a lot about her time here and learned about these things. So I came here today because I also work for a nonprofit in which focuses on civic education called Generation Nation. It used to be called Kids Voting, so it's great to see you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Reverend Michael Johnson Jr. It's great to be here this morning. I am here not just to be educated, but to support my statements for running for Board of Education. But I'm graced and grateful to be here this morning. It's an absolute pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you. Right here on the inside.
Good morning, my name is Veronica Hall. I am here supporting my husband, candidate Juanrique Hall, running for school board.
Hi, I'm Samantha Turner. I wear many hats in Charlotte these days, and one of them is managing the school board at large campaign for Shemaya Haynes. I'm very happy to be here. Thank you.
And thank you. Welcome. Come back again. Not just when your candidates are running, but come back anytime. We also want to recognize Commissioner Arthur Griffin back there. He has a lot to do with the school board. We do appreciate his attendance today. And by the way, he used to be chair of the Charlotte Mecklenburg School System Board of Education for many years. Okay, so we have lots of candidates here today, so we're going to have to do things a little bit differently. We're going to have each of them to speak for 2 minutes to give their opening remarks, and then we're going to take questions from the audience. You're going to have 30 seconds to ask your question, and you're going to have 1 minute to answer your question. So keep in mind that if you ask a question that goes way deep in the woods, they're not going to be able to give you that type of answer in 1 minute, okay? So let's make sure that we give them questions that they can answer in 1 minute. Okay, Natalie is going to be keeping the time. Okay, 30 seconds. Yeah, she'll keep the time for us. And that's for you asking the questions also. Yeah. So we're going to start with, over here with Miss Annette Albright, and then we'll just go down the line. We have 2 mics up here. And we do have to use the mic because of the streaming audience. We do have a streaming audience, and they can't hear unless you are using the mic. And then we could possibly, and we usually do get questions that are either texted in or sent in by email. So we'll ask those questions also. Okay.
Only the green light on the mic when it's on.
There's a green light. Yes, yes, yes. Go ahead.
Good morning. Thank you so much for having me. My name is Annette Albright, and I'm a candidate for school board at large. I'll try to get as much in 2 minutes as I can. I have been an advocate for safe schools for over 6 years now. I am also the only candidate here that has worked the school-to-prison pipeline. So I know what that looks like. I know how children are diverted and how students are diverted from school and end up in the Department of Corrections. Schools are the most successful and resourceful tool we have to lifting our students out of poverty. Mecklenburg County rates very low in people being able to lift themselves out of poverty. And the one resource we have that every student is going to touch the door of that is education, a Charlotte Mecklenburg school. So we have to get it right. We have to take every opportunity to fix it because the schools are the backbones of your city. If you have a strong, thriving city, you have a strong, thriving public school system. I am the candidate that needs to come in and turn around the school board. We haven't been able to get it right in years, but now is the time to get it right. So please vote Annette Albright for Board of Education at large.
Thank you. Before you speak, I'm sorry to interrupt, but when you finish talking, make sure you turn the mic off before you lay it on the table, because we're getting some feedback from people online that they're hearing the bump, bump, bump on the tables. So when you finish speaking, but you're passing it down right now, but the last person, make sure you turn it off. Thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Shemaya Haynes, and I want the Tuesday Morning Forum breakfast to know that I am a parent who has progressed through CMS education advocacy, education community organizing, and what I seek to do is to tie education into strong community building and development. I look forward to your questions. If you want more details about my full platform, please visit shemaya.com, and it's all there. But I look forward to the questions this morning. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Bill Fountain, also running for the school board at large. And thank you for the opportunity to be here. One of the first questions that I've been asking people is, are you satisfied with the performance that we have been seeing with our student performance, where we're looking at about a 9.4% of our students in Math 1 those are the only ones that are passing the state standard, and that is a very poor thing. The next thing is that you get about 11.2% of the Black and Hispanics are passing the third grade reading level for the state standards. Those type of performances are undermining our children's future. It also demoralizes their spirit, their motivation. And that has something we have to do with. We have to change that type of a thing. And for about the last 15 years, I have been working as either as a school teacher, as a volunteer pilot, and going to the CMS school board meetings for the last 2 years to try to make these changes to help our students, to save our public schools. Now, what was my background? I have a leadership experience, proven leadership experience as a lieutenant colonel in the Air Force, as a combat fighter pilot and defense planner. Also, as a teamwork and leadership in the business world in a Fortune 101 company as a programs and a marketing manager. And I also have experience as I'm a licensed and experienced middle and high school teacher. I know the challenges of the teachers, the school administration, and parents, where they have the concerns about the safety of their children and, of course, about out to their success. I've got 4 items that I intend to work on. First is to hold CMS leadership accountable for the student performance and their transparency. Time. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. My name is Claire Covington, and I'm running for an at-large seat on the Board of Education in the November 7th election. I'm a mom of 2 girls in a CMS school, and I'm also a licensed North Carolina attorney who's been practicing for over 16 years. I decided to run for school board at this point because I believe that CMS is obligated under the law to provide all students with a quality education. I'm going to be honest. We may not all agree with what constitutes a quality education. And we all know that different children learn differently. But I do believe that with my set of skills, my experience, and of course my lived experience, having experienced the pandemic with a kindergartner trying to learn over Zoom, that I can work with Dr. Hill and with my fellow board members to improve educational outcomes and focus CMS back on the basics. I also believe that my experience will help us negotiate and form relationships within the community, and that in turn, our students will not only have improved outcomes, but all kids will feel safe while at school. I'm running on a slate with the Reverend Michael Johnson and Ms. Albright, but I only need 1 vote, and there are 3 seats available. I only need 1 vote to have a chance to make a difference for the kids of CMS. Thank you.
Hello, good morning. My name is Enrique Hall. I'm running for CMS School Board at Large. I think about heard everything that you can hear, and I don't want to bore you. I am an aeronautical engineer. I own a daycare. I work with reentry kids. I work with alternatives to violence, innovative Fort Road corridor. I'm all about the Title IX, reforming Title IX. I'm all about making the kids understand the basics. We got to get the kids to learn how to read clocks. We got to get the kids to learn how to write in cursive. We got to get the kids back to learn how to fill out an envelope. We got to get the kids to learn how to read a map. If we unplug their life today, half our kids couldn't survive. It's all about getting back to the basics. It's all about the kids loving themselves. And that's what I'm about, all about the basics. I choose students over sides. I don't choose sides. I choose what's best for that child. Whatever color you are, whatever race you are, it's all about getting back to the basics because there's no free education. Education costs, and we need to make our teachers accountable for the tax dollars that we pay for our kids to get our education. Thank you.
Okay, I'd like to thank all of you for your opening statements. We have 1 question so far. We have Laura. Okay.
I would just like for each one of you all to just share with us one of the main things that you hope to accomplish to assist or to make our school system better. Just one thing, if you can tell us what you feel that you can accomplish if you're elected to be on the school board.
Okay, you have 1 minute.
Who you want to start?
It doesn't matter.
The one thing I want to accomplish is to get the parents back into the school system, the basics. I mean, we can accomplish the basics. That's all we need to do. We need to start off with getting the schools involved in the daycares that the kids go to and starting a program with the kids in the daycare. And we can, if we do that, then the reading levels will come up. It's all about starting with the foundation. If you got a good foundation, the house will be built properly. That's all it's about. Just get back to the basics and make these kids respect their elders and prioritize the things that we need to be in life.
I'm going to take the other end of it.
Yes, ma'am.
And I agree with you that the basics are incredibly important. I think that if I got on the school board, I would try to focus on alternative learning pathways. Right now, everyone wants to talk about college readiness. No one really wants to focus on how we can get kids ready for becoming entrepreneurs and taking alternative paths to success in life. As an attorney, I represent a lot of small businesses. I help them with their intellectual property. I help them register their LLCs. Many of them did not graduate from high school. Most of them did not graduate from college. And yet they still own and run successful businesses. And guess what? They've got a lot less debt than I do after going through college and grad school. So if it were me, I would try and explore and implement additional programs that allow students from CMS to be successful in other ways, simply going to college.
Thank you. Wonderful comments from both of these about bringing the family engagement into the schools and this alternative. That is, I had a student that struggled in, I was an algebra 1 teacher, and the student was struggling in the classroom in behavior and in learning. But we had a house that we were building. It was not a house, it's more like a shed. And that boy, when he got involved in that and building that, he knew proportions. He knew he could figure out where to cut the board to get the angles. All right, so those are the type of things that I really appreciate though. My point, one of the main things I would say is to respect the code of student conduct. That way, we can have a productive classroom. Because if you have disruptions in the classroom, no one learns. But the child who has to be taken out of the classroom, we have got to find a way to help them keep pace with the rest of the students and to get them to want to come back to the classroom. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. McLetty, for asking that question. One of the reasons why I've decided to run is because I have solutions that I want to put forward. Just naming one is a challenge, but I'll go with the one that I think provides more of a holistic approach. And that is the community schools model. It is an evidence-based model. It is the model that is the flagship model for staving off the charter school movement in Title I communities. Why is that? The reason that is because it hones in on parent satisfaction, it hones in on community development and community building, and it's an asset-based model. When I think about the improvement of schools, I don't just think about it one way. I look at what's holistic for our community, and I want you to know that the community schools model is not something that Shemaya Haynes came up with. Over 15,000 school districts have honed in on this model, and they've made a success in improving academic outcomes. Thank you.
Good morning, and that is an amazing question. So I want to start by asking you a question. I see that we have a full house this morning, and I'm very pleased with that. But how many of you would have come here this morning if you felt that there was a threat that you would be sexually assaulted? What about beaten up? What about jumped by some of the students? How many of you would have felt safe enough to come in here and engage with us with no police officers, no security guard? I don't think that would be very many of you. So my priority would be creating safe schools. Because if you create safe schools, the highly qualified educators will come and they will stay. The families will return to CMS. The students will feel comfortable going into an academic environment knowing that they can learn. So those are the things that we have to do. First, we have to create safe havens for learning before we can do anything else. You can bring in the best programs. You can drop the most money inside of a school. But if a child does not feel safe and an educator does not feel safe, academic process will not happen.
Okay, do we have any questions from the audience already? Oh, Winston.
Good morning. While I appreciate everybody having a plan and the way they would like to approach their position on school board, how exactly what steps will you take to make sure your plan is implemented? What will you do to make sure you can get what you say you're doing, want to do, done?
Where you want to start?
Thank you, and that is an amazing question. So I think the first thing we have to realize is collaboration. No one can do anything alone. We all have to work together. And when you're talking about the school system, remember, the school system is the backbone of your city. So we have to reach out, and one of the things that I feel strongly about with Charlotte-Mecklenburg School Board and the way they have operated in the past is they operate in a huddle and in secrecy. We don't know what's getting done. We don't know what they're doing. And you have other entities that should be involved in that process. You have students. You have the business community. You have city council. You have the Board of County Commissions. All are invested in the student outcomes and what's going on inside those schools. So one of the things that I would do to make sure that my plan and the vision for Charlotte-Mecklenburg schools moves forward as I feel it should, I would reach out and I would collaborate with all stakeholders.
Thank you for that question. I've already started the process of getting community schools implemented in CMS. I started a campaign where I went to the community and asked the question whether or not the community wanted the community schools model. It was a resounding yes, and I only have 2 minutes, so I'll make it short. But we now have the support and collaboration for exploration in 2 schools, Hidden Valley and Martin Luther King Middle. Those things have already come to fruition without my presence on the board. What I do if I'm on the board is to establish policy along with you and the community to support the community schools model in a much deeper way. Much of my work has been well underway through my advocacy, collaboration, and working with all stakeholders. Thank you.
Thank you. And the way of implementation is one of the things I've been already started out on is meeting with some of the faith communities throughout the city to get their encouragement to, because they're the ones who wants to bring in the families and to more of the parental rights to get involved, and that is bringing, I think, a lot of fruitful efforts with that. Also is meeting with young students. Just last night I met with some students. It gave me some great information about what their sense of things are, which is also tied in with my four plans, which I'll get a chance to talk about somewhere along the line. So, and then the other thing is, and for the past 2 years, I've been talking to the CMS School Board and meeting with those folks, trying to bring in more of the things about the accountability and transparency as we talked about. So that's one of the things, some of the ways to implement that. Thank you.
Thank you. I think one of the important things to remember about the Board of Education is that it essentially serves as a board of directors of a company. And I believe that the people that are on the Board of Education need to run CMS, the organization, as if it were, and is, a $2.4 billion industry. As such, the way I would attack all of the problems that we're trying to solve would be to work first with Dr. Hill, because I believe that she has her finger on the pulse of the highest need within CMS. And then I would reach out to the business community and the community leaders. Because if Charlotte is not thriving, if our public schools are not thriving, our business community cannot thrive and our city cannot succeed. And that is exactly how I would accomplish my goals for the board.
How I will accomplish my goals for the board is, the first thing I will get from behind the desk downtown. I will let people see who I am, my vibe and personality. I'll let People know that I'm a man of my word. I'll be at football games, basketball games. I'll be transparent. I'll be out in the community. I'm gonna knock on doors. If there's a problem in a school, I'm gonna go to that school and see what the problem is. If there's a gun found, I'm gonna be on campus the next day to let the principal and the faculty know that the school board is behind them and we're not gonna stand for it. So basically being transparent and being a person that people know their personality and they can trust it.
Did everyone have a chance to answer that?
Yes.
Okay, I have questions that are coming in. We have people online that are coming in. I'll let Jean go ahead with her question, then I'm gonna jump in with a couple of questions. And then we'll go
Good morning.
to Natalie and Jackie.
Let me just interrupt for a minute. I think we could give them.
Good morning, I'm Jean
Excuse me,
Smith.
just a minute, I'm sorry. I think we could give them 2 minutes because they're chopping off at the end. They're not getting to say what
Okay.
they thought.
Okay, I know. When we have a group, it's just really hard. We want everybody to be able to get their question in. Okay.
So we'll give
So
them two minutes, okay. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Okay, again, good morning, I am Jean Smith. And the November ballot is going to include a $2.5 billion bond referendum to basically update and build new schools. When citizens ask why they should vote for the bonds, what is your most compelling reason for voting for the bond? I would appreciate everybody answering. Thank you.
Well, one thing I would say is it's a two-part with me. I will vote for the bond because of building new schools and new facilities. It helps the kid feels proud about themselves, and with new technology in the school, they can learn better. But another part of it I don't like is there's nothing in it for free lunch programs. There's nothing in it for kids that needs Wi-Fi. It's nothing in it that for kids that don't have the right equipment at the schools. I have been to football games where there's one school that looks good and the other school looks like a ragamuffin. And I don't feel that's right with a bond with billions of dollars. It could be a surplus set aside for each school to have something for the kids that's low performer that don't have the booster club that can afford to do these things. Thank you.
I can probably agree with everything that's set up here. As a trained attorney, I can argue things both ways and I can see the pros and cons to most issues. I'm gonna be completely honest with you though, ma'am. I don't think it's my place to advise people how to vote on the bond. What I do think, as a member of the Board of Education, it's my job to oversee that whether the community votes to support the bond or to deny the bond, that money is used appropriately within CMS. So that is my answer.
Thank you. And the way that the school bond, I happen to agree with Mr. Arthur Griffin, Pat Connell, and Wilma Lee about the supporting the bond. I think they're asking too much for, granted, we need new buildings, we need renovation, etc., but I think it should have been more of a piecemeal. There's still $1.3 billion left of the 2013-2017 bonds. And as the taxpayers, I don't think people want to see their taxes to go up. So I agree with what you're saying about if you're on the board, that you gotta find ways to make sure that this money is spent properly. For instance, I would focus on the renovation to get the schools that are dilapidated, to get those working properly. And then you can start doing some of the other things, but I would start building the brand new schools on that, because there's some of it they build and replace on the same location, and that would I'd go ahead and support some of that. But I don't think it takes that $2.5 billion. I'm afraid that it's not going to get support within the community because of its largeness and because of the anticipation of tax hikes. which I don't think most of us want to have in an inflation era that we are faced with. Thank you.
Thank you for that question, Jean. One of the most practical ways that you can support the school system as an ordinary citizen is to be a part of committees. I have been a part of the Bond Oversight Committee within CMS for probably around, at least 4 years. And one of the things that we're responsible for is to make sure that the bonds that we commit to are being allocated to the right things and those kinds of things. So that's where, from a citizen's point of view, the accountability takes place. I have had issues in every bond discussion that we've ever had. However, as a school board member, it is never going to be to our advantage to deny resources coming to the schools. And what I mean by that is if we reject a bond, that choice could be long-standing for a lot of children. We are a city that is constantly growing. Some schools are busting out of the seams. Some schools are still in trailers. And unfortunately, when we talk about construction, similar to roads and things like that, it takes a long time for those projects to catch up to the growing population. I do want to say this, that as a bond oversight member, I have learned an incredible amount about our facilities, our buildings, and the needs. So my perspective is that we should support the bonds, and we should also, ahead of time as a community, be very vocal in terms of what we get equity-wise and work with our community to identify what those things are.
Thank you, Ms. Smith, for that question. So the why. Why should we support bonds? The why is because we have 100 people a day, maybe over 100 people a day, moving into Charlotte. Our city is growing. We are the 17th largest school district in the United States. So we are going to have to support that with infrastructure. There's no way around it. Where the people tend to pull back is because traditionally, Charlotte-Mecklenburg schools have not been good stewards of tax dollars. And that's a fact. So we have a community that strongly supports public schools and giving them the resources that they need. Is how those resources are being spent that's making some people think, maybe we need to hold up for a minute. This spring, I sat down with Dr. Stearns, I hope that's his name, at Hardin High School, the principal, and Starnes. And we talked about the bond package. I was the education chair of the NAACP. In 2016, when I worked at Hardin High School, the building was not wired for smart boards. So we had teachers still writing on blackboards where you could go 5 miles up the road and see a state-of-the-art school. That's not fair to students, parents, or stakeholders. Everyone has a right to access to an equitable education. So that's why we need the bonds. As a school board member, what I will do is ensure that those monies are being spent for projects that are in the most dire need. We also had a world athlete at Hardin High School who didn't have a track to practice on. And they were loading the kids up in buses, sending them to a better school to run on their track. They couldn't have home football games. There's a problem with that. And that's where the need and the drawback comes in.
Okay, thank you. Thank you all for answering that. Okay, I do have, I'll ask one of the questions. And I'm going to preface this question with, since most of you are not, don't have an education background, what educational material or periodicals do you read regularly? Anybody?
I'll start. Well, I read on a I want people to be assured that I read on a regular basis. One of the things that I really enjoy reading are case studies on a variety of topics. I'll also let this audience know that I've had the privilege for about a year now to be a guest lecturer at UNC Charlotte. And along with that, what I have to do is I have to prepare myself in order to prepare students. And so I get lots of opportunities to read, I don't want people to think that I'm always reading studies. There are other periodicals and things that I like to read, but reading is definitely fundamental. In order to create an educated argument, to run for school board, and to have an articulate message, you definitely have to be reading. I encourage it for little people and big people.
Well, you know, to pick up on that, the answer about reading, you know, when I was a teacher, of course, I taught geometry, and I was obviously studying stuff about geometry. And some of the aspects, particularly about geometry, was some of the fundamental things of called fractals, and reading some of some very not scientific, I guess, mathematicians that discovered these different things, and which I could show kids what's going on in nature that mimics the things that we see. For instance, like the salt. You know, a crystal thing of salt shows it from a crystal, and how the water comes off the ocean. When it recedes, it comes up, it forms little parallelograms. So those are the type of things that I was immersed in when I was a teacher. Now, outside of that, I'm reading all things, for instance, like a lot of online things for like the Axis, and also of what's going on within the school system. Not only that, because I usually speak there once a month, but also follow those type of thing, what is happening, and also within the city, of what is going on, and of course into our local town frames. So that's kind of a quick answer to that. Thank you.
I read modern novels. The kids that I work with, because I hated reading in school. I was not a studious person. But I had a teacher that showed me that if you find something that interests you, and she taught me a unique way of learning. So every kid that I get, I find a way to grab their imagination. So modern novels, and this summer, I got a chance to take to Niagara Falls to show them one of their models. And basically, what I'm saying is, I get choked up because it's so many times that kids get left behind because nobody really understands their mindset and their brains. And like everybody said, everybody don't learn the same way. So you got to find a unique way of teaching a kid. If I see a kid, and I can only speak from where I've been, that's standing on the corner, that's selling drugs, I look at that kid and I say, what are you good at? And he's good at keeping numbers in his head. So I take that kid and I take away the drugs from him, and I take the gift that the Lord gave him, and I took him down to Mr. Means Tax Service on Thrift Road, and he's now a certified public accountant, because I took the gift that the Lord gave him and showed him how to use it in a good way.
I think Annette has the answer.
Go ahead, Annette.
I was listening to Mr. Hall, I think I forgot the question.
Okay, I'm gonna read it again. What educational material or periodicals do you regularly read?
Okay, I can give you the academic question, the academic answer that you all want to hear, or I can give you my honest answer. I have 3 degrees, okay, an associate, a bachelor's, and a master's. I have a lot of certifications. I have instructor certification. So I'm just not going to pick up a periodical just to say, hey, let me sit and read this during lunch. I'm usually reading, and when I need answers, I'm doing research. I love a good Facebook post, okay? I read those all day. But we have to remember, what is the purpose of reading? And that is to gather information. So if there is something that I don't know, something that I need to be made more aware of, then that's when I will open up, I will Google, I will do whatever I need to do to gather that information. I just don't have a lot of time these days to sit down and read a long novel, but understand that the purpose of reading is gathering information. So in that particular sense, if I need information that I don't know, that's when I start to read.
Thank you, Annette. I would actually echo those sentiments. One thing I learned in law school was that I do not know the answers to everything. In fact, I don't know the answers to many things. So I find myself, especially these days, last year I worked on current board member Stephanie Sneed's campaign. And there were a lot of things I didn't know about the education system. Currently, I'm focusing in on SOFG, which is something that the board has moved to recently, and that is student outcome focused governance. I do not know enough to give a report on it to this group yet, but I am signed up for the event that's next Saturday, and I look forward to learning a lot more. Because I have a first grader and a third grader in CMS, I also read a lot of Bob books, which are terribly boring, let's be honest. So I appreciate what you had to say, Juan, that when you can find something that's entertaining, it's definitely a lot more enjoyable when it comes to teaching kids to read.
Okay, Nathalie.
My question has to do with the low performance of so many of the children in CMS. It just seems to me so logical that the highest performing teachers should be teaching the lowest performing students. And that is nowhere near what is happening at CMS. Would you tell me, number one, do you think that the highest performing teachers should be teaching the lowest performing students? And if so, how would you get that done?
Yes, sir.
Who wants to tackle that first?
She's getting a mic.
Yeah, I think that's an outstanding question. One of the things that I found as a teacher is that at first, when I was a geometry teacher, and when I had honor students in geometry, it made things so easy about instructing because most of those students were motivated and they wanted to learn. But then some other teacher came in and they said, well, Bill, we're going to move you to the, what we call the CP, the college prep type of. So it's, it's a little bit lesser. And that was really a lot more challenging to teach. And I found that as I was getting through that, I was becoming a better teacher because I was working harder to try to find ways to motivate, try to find ways to bring interest into geometry. And that was the reason I was talking about some of the things about what's going on in nature that is just absolutely beautiful, and taking the kids out on field trips or even just out of the classroom, out into the back of the school and look at what's going on within the nature of the geometric things that are happening there. And that brought, it almost like opened some of these students' eyes and said, oh, wow, this is something. And then I had the opportunity to be a aviation teacher. I taught aviation at the school, which that was wonderful, of being able to take these students actually flying. I would go out and rent an airplane and fly them on my own nickel. Nickels only, it wasn't a nickel, it was a lot of money. But be able to do it, and you'd be surprised of how having this something different that these students could look at, think like, wow, maybe I could be a pilot. Maybe I could work on an airplane. Maybe I could do this. And that just brought spirit into them and encouragement. And they had motivation to do that. Sorry for the running over time. Thank you.
Before the next person answers, could you repeat your question?
So sorry. you agree that the highest performing teachers should be teaching the lowest performing students? And if so, how would you get that done?
I don't think that matters whether you're a high performing teacher or low performing teacher. I feel that it's got to be a teacher that's relatable to that kid. You can be the most educated person in the world, but if your words are intimidating to a child that has no idea what a thesaurus is, you're going to lose it. But if you have just a simple Miss Turner or somebody that loves and cares about you and take interest in where you come from and your ideas and take the time to learn who you are as a person, and you rub them on the head, that's all it takes. A child just needs somebody to just turn that light bulb on. That's it. It don't have to be, because when I was growing up, hey, I just had a lady next door to me. They sit me down and showed me how to write my name in the dirt. I don't think she ever went to college nowhere, but she taught me. I don't think it's about education. I think it's about your moral fiber and who you are as a person and how you engage with that child.
Did you like him?
Okay, I'll take a stab at that question. As a former employee of CMS, that is a multi-layered issue. And the reason is because we have choices. So when an educator is filling out an application for a school, they're filling out an application for a particular school. It might be that their child goes to that school. It's in proximity to their home. But it also goes back to a safety issue. People want to feel safe at their jobs. So if you're watching the news and you're hearing that this school is having 12 fights a week, we found 4 guns over there, we're short-staffed, I don't think a lot of people are going to say, hey, that's the school that I want to be at, unless you just have a gift for turning around schools. So I think what we have to do, because even with incentives being offered to educators to leave this school and go across to maybe this school, it did not work. So I think what we have to do, we have to work very hard on creating safe schools in every community and in every neighborhood. And I like to think of it as the Chick-fil-A effect. I expect the same service, the same quality, the same happy faces at Chick-fil-A in Valentine when I go to where I live in Northwest Charlotte. I expect that same service, and I expect a quality of service. And until we work to create schools that are equitable across the district, we are not going to attract those highly qualified teachers to those schools, even with extra added incentives.
I think it's a great question, and I wish it were as simple as what you propose. Because it would be real easy to look at the numbers and say these teachers received all A's and these teachers received all F's and these are our top performing schools and we'll put the F teachers over here and the A teachers over there. But I wonder what the outcome would be after 4 years, 6 years, 10 years if we took that approach. So my answer is no. I do not think that is the solution. I think I would go back to what Juan said over here, but I would move it out a little bit in the timeline. I think the issue is identifying students and what their strengths are and what their weaknesses are, and then attempting to match those students with educators and programs that speak to the strengths of the students. I don't think that EOGs should be the end-all, be-all measure for kids and their success as to whether they're failing or succeeding. What I think should matter more is, are they happy? Are they becoming productive members of Mecklenburg County? And has the safety in the schools improved as a result of the kids feeling like they're part of a bigger community and more respected?
I think the question is one that deserves some deep thought, and I don't think that there's a yes or no for me. This is what I do know. What I do know is that teaching is the one profession where experience matters. It is not to say that a first-year teacher can't be a solid teacher and a great teacher. But we do know that experience counts. Where do teachers get their experience? And so what I kind of think of is that the school is a reflection of a large community. You have some people who are older, some people who are younger, some people of multi-races, ethnic groups, and all of those things. And so I think it takes a multitude of people to create a successful school. I want to take a moment to really highlight something that I think is very important. If we as a community don't take active steps to change school culture and the environment in which teachers want to teach, we're gonna be in a lot of trouble. That will mean that a good, solid teacher with years of experience and all of the certifications will hesitate about going into a school where the environment for learning and the conditions in which he or she has to work will be less than what they want it to be. So the answer is yes and no. It takes a whole village to raise a child. It takes a long length of experiences and different experiences to make a school successful.
Okay, did everyone answer that question? Okay, I'm gonna, I know I have Crispin and Nas, but I need to jump in with another online question right quick. In June 2024, we will graduate the next CMS class. What skills and knowledge should each graduate possess? And I like that question. I'm going to just add a little tidbit to that. I like that question because we've had people here from vocational schools where students are graduating from CMS and going to vocational schools to learn, vocations, okay? But the directors are saying that these students cannot read on the 8th grade level. Because even in a vocational school, they have to get them ready for certifications in those areas. And they cannot read on the 8th grade level. So this question resonates with me. What skills and knowledge should each graduate possess? Should they be able to read on the 8th grade level? And why are they not reading on the 8th grade level?
I don't even, what is the 8th grade level? What is reading on the 8th grade level? That's my first question. Who made the level of 8th grade level of reading? I don't understand that. I understand that a child needs to know, and I go back to what I was saying before, the basics, before they leave high school. They need to know how to endorse a check. They need to know how to read a clock. They need to know how to count money back to you. They need to know how to respect their elders. They need to know the basics, how to read, how to write, and everything else. Before they leave high school, it should be some type of program set aside to say, what do you want to do in life? Because a lot of kids don't even know what they want to do, and a lot of people haven't even asked the child what they want to do. They press college in their face because it's supposed to be a rite of passage. But I feel that we have vocational things in school to say, what do you want to do? You want to be a brick mason, HVAC, the next air traffic controller, a stewardess. Then we would know how to direct that child when they leave the school and graduate with a certificate and they can go on in life. But what does it mean to read on the 8th grade level? That's what I'm trying to understand. As long as you can read and get through life, everything else is going to come.
I agree about what does it matter or mean to read on an 8th grade level. I also absolutely agree that our kids need to understand the basics. And I do not currently think that is happening in CMS, because it seems to me that when we get through the 3rd grade and we hit that critical EOG 3rd grade reading level, There's been a policy implemented across our district to just keep pushing kids on through the school system. The problem I see with that is that you may have a kid who's very talented in math or science, but if they can't read the math problem or the science problem, then they're going to fail math and science as well. So yes, being able to read is incredibly important. Going back to the basics is very important. Part of the platform that I'm running on is that we return to a more classical model education. Teaching cursive writing is part of that platform. Enabling kids to understand their rights under our Constitution is also important. Because when they grow up and we expect them to step out into the world and become productive members of society, they need to understand what their civic obligations are. So that is what I think is more important than just reading at an 8th grade level. A more holistic approach to education that allows the whole child to be supported and educated so that when they do graduate, they become a productive member of Mecklenburg County.
One of the questions you're talking about what skills they should possess at when they graduate. The state law is pretty well established of what type of things the students need to be able to have. In other words, there's so many math courses, so many academic or science and et cetera. It's pretty well laid out in the standards by the state. And in regard, so those are the things that the school board has an obligation, and what the school system has an obligation to be able to do. Obviously, they're falling way short of being able to do that. Now, in regard to 8th grade reading, I've heard also that most of the newspapers articles are at that level. They're written at that level for 8th grade reading, because that's what I guess the general population is about. It is accepted, and which is not. It's I guess you can call it dumbing down type things, and we shouldn't do that. We should have higher expectations of our students, because I think they will reach for those higher goals if they're motivated, to be able to do that. One of the things too is that Mr. Hall was even touching on is that even all the trades that you look into, all of them do require reading. And that's something that we should be really focusing on, and it's really a shame of what we're seeing that I mentioned earlier, about 11.2%, and that's a Black and Hispanic can even meet that goal at the end of the 3rd grade. It's horrible, but we have to. The key thing, though, is going back to what the question was, what skills they should have. That's established by the school system, by the state. Thank you.
So I tried to write a few things down here. One of the things that I think is critical is that we begin to think about our children and what they're going to do as they grow up in life. Really, that should take place in middle school. We shouldn't wait until high school to start to talk about careers or college or vocations. And the reason I say that is because middle school is that critical time when children are actually very motivated to explore things. I have an 8th grader who I'm very proud of, and she's actually looking at entrepreneurship. And that's because she's been introduced to a variety of things that she can explore and be interested in. By the time a child graduates from high school, they should understand how to critically think. How to go left, how to go right. Okay, that road is blocked. How do I navigate around that? Understanding how to simply think critically. And having a skill would be helpful. I learned how to type after high school, but how helpful would that have been if I had learned how to type in high school? And the last thing I think that's very important is something that the school system actually does help students in, if it's a quality school, and that's giving them life skills, setting goals. asking the questions, not just what you want to do, but how do you go to achieve those things prior to graduation. So of course, all the basic things that Bill spoke about, but also these 3 things will help to navigate in life.
Okay, so one of the things that I learned when I was just sitting around reading for no reason was that the speeches of the President of the United States are written by his speechwriters on a 12th grade level. Why a 12th grade level? Because that is the expectation in the United States. The government offers you 12 years of free education. So the expectation is everyone is able to understand, comprehend, and communicate on a 12th grade level. What that also does is set you up for choices. If you decide that you want to go into a vocational field, you are prepared to go into that vocational field. If things go the way we plan, if you want to go to college, you should be able to go to college and successfully navigate that. Unfortunately, our system's not working that way. The majority of student debt is incurred in college in remedial education courses, which means we're not educating our children on a 12th grade level. So you need to be at least that level to decide what your next step is going to be. So that is why it is important that we test children, we make sure they're moving along successfully, and we're making sure that they are on the appropriate level so they will be able to make those choices and goals for the remainder of their lives.
Did everyone have a chance to respond to that question? Okay, we are really running out of time. I don't think that we're going to be able to do 2 minutes, maybe a minute and a half. Okay, if everybody's going to answer the question, because we have several people. Crispin, and then Nas, and then Jackie.
Good morning. So my question is for Black children. Who will, usually during 3rd grade, that's when they start looking at Black boys for prison, or start looking at more behavior issues instead of education. How can we focus on, I guess, alternative ways of learning for people or kids that doesn't have a systematic way or approach to life? And how will they be nourished instead of punished?
That's a question for me. I love this question. First of all, I deal with at-risk kids every day, re-entry kids every day, kids with house monitors on, kids that watch their parents overdose on drugs, all that. Long story short, what we have to do with our young Black males is, the first thing of it is the statistics are, you got 7 young Black males born in the hospital. Off the gate, 4 of them going to die. 2 of them going to jail and 1 might succeed. That's the statistics, and we got to make the abnormal not normal. We got to make normal again. And so basically what we got to do for our young Black males is get in the household with them, help the single parent. That's the first thing we got to do. Make them respect their mothers and adults. Number 2, we got to find something that they love to do. Because when they get out here in gangs, it ain't the fact that they're going to looking for someone to get in trouble. They're looking for someone to be, somebody to care about, and somebody to love them. Young Black males look for Black males to show them the way. A woman can raise them the age of a man, but she cannot instill manly values in him. So the first thing of it is we got to get control of his mindset and make him understand that living is the way to go and not dying.
I'm not the right person to answer this question. And I think that that's part of the benefit of being on the Board of Education, is that you have a team that you can reach out to and ask questions when you don't have the answer. If I were going to give you an answer, just to be respectful of the fact that you've asked the question.
That's all I need. That's it.
Okay, okay.
What one of the things that you hit the nail on the head about, particularly in the third grade, and one of the things that, picking up on what Mr. Hall was saying, about the parental involvement is going to be a very helpful thing with that. But in the classroom, when these students, if they are misbehaving disorderly in the classroom, then we have to find a way, an alternative way, like you were saying, is to help those children who are not, their behavior is not supportive of a productive classroom. So we have to find a way to help them. And one of the ways that I have been in some of the schools around the county is there are faith-based places, schools, and mainly churches that are willing to help these type of children to help them nourish, to give them help during this time, either, so they can keep pace with the rest of their children, and particularly in the reading. So, I mean, I've already talked to several people, and just this last, a couple weekends ago, I met this gentleman he's working on something like that. So, I'm sorry for going over time. Thank you.
This is something that's very important to me. We have a long-standing understanding in our community that a lot of what takes place in schools as far as discipline and those things are things that actually come from the community and filter back into the schools. Not always, but quite a few of those things. Keeping with my community-based platform, I would offer up that one of the things we can sort of look at is the restorative justice practices. Restorative justice practices seeks to restore that person, restore children back into the school community, but it also extends itself to the parents and to the family and trying to identify for that child what the right behavior context is without criminalizing the child or putting a mark on that child's head. The other piece that I've always been curious about and have struggled to understand is what are the behavior, what are the interventions within CMS that I could support? We talked about discipline policies, but as a parent and as a community member, if we had some things that we could identify with as an intervention that we could support at home and in the community, I think that would take us miles and miles in an effort to bring the conduct where it needs to be and also to slow the prison to pipeline, because that's really what we're talking about.
Okay, and I have a background in criminal justice and also correction and juvenile services. And what I have learned is that not every child can be educated in a traditional classroom. There are factors that administrators, teachers, and educators just simply cannot control. But what we must do, we must find a place where those children can be educated, and that education not come with stigma, labels, and it not be punitive. One of the things that I've been really excited about, I guess I shouldn't be excited about it, is some of the charter schools that I'm seeing close and some of the beautiful buildings that are sitting empty. And we're talking about educators who's saying my classroom is too full and I have 5 children with behavior issues and I'm not sure what I'm going to do. As board members, why are we not out looking at those buildings saying, hey, how can CMS utilize these buildings to make our educators' job less complicated, to maybe remove a child from a traditional school and put them in a place where their needs can be met until they can transition back into a traditional school setting. Those are the type of things as a board member that we should be thinking about, and should be looking out and reaching out to our city partners and saying, hey, how can we make this work so every child gets the education they deserve?
So the nonprofit that I mentioned earlier, Kids Voting, that turned into Generation Nation, not only does Kids Voting, also has various programs within the city, county, and some programs in the state. Now, one of the biggest things Generation Nation does is it provides the official Charlotte-Mecklenburg Youth Council. And the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Youth Council is made up of over 100 high schools, all of the CMS ones and others. Now, this is my question. Just as you guys are the conduit for parents, I'm the conduit for them. So all of them across the board, whether you have it's open to all students, whether you have high flyers or people who don't participate in school or might not be interested, whatever it is, regardless of race, creed, whatever. These students all have one consistent message. Schools across the board are inconsistent. Whether you talk about attendance policy or whether you talk about cell phone policy, all the reforms you guys want to make are great, but you can't make any reforms if all the schools are inconsistent. So what are the ways, working with the superintendent, that you're going to tackle
that? I would love to start off that question. I met with Dr. Hadabad. I miss everyone's name up. Y'all know what I'm talking about. Last year, Superintendent Hill, and I was accompanied with Corinne Mack, who is the head of the NAACP. At the time, I was the education chair. And that is the exact thing that I brought up, the inconsistency across the board. So what I was told is, we allow principals to lead their schools the way they feel because they're everything and they know how to lead their schools. But there also should be some consistencies. I worked in Title I schools the entire time by choice. And they had positions called behavior modification technicians. Well, you think a behavior modification technician is going to do that, modify behaviors. Well, you could go to this school, the behavior modification technician was a security guard who was actually out fighting and trying to separate children. You could go to a school across the way. The behavior modification person was the person who kept the in-school suspension. It differed from school to school. How can you get any type of consistency and justify having that position when you're seeing a variety of results based on one title? And Mr. Hadabad, at the end of that conversation, said, I absolutely agree with what Ms. Albright is saying, and I like it. Are we utilizing our positions, and are we utilizing them in a consistent manner?
I think we could address that. I think we could address that in a number of ways. One of the things that I thought about was one of the biggest challenges that I had as a parent trying to get answers or trying to hold people accountable was the fact that it's very difficult when it's easy to navigate a school environment when the principal is high level, high understanding, well-rounded, and the school is pretty much performing and functioning at a level that we all desire. Unfortunately, when a school is not performing at that level, then it makes it a challenge to go to the principal and say, hey, I want to do this or that, or why isn't this consistent, or why isn't this policy being enforced? I think one of the solid solutions that we could come to is a structure that we already have in place, which is our learning community structure. Most members of our community do not know who that person is even, but that person could be responsible for full and complete autonomy in the learning community, but then they have the full and complete accountability to what's taking place in the schools. Currently, that person is a principal supervisor, but we really give that person the full responsibility of our community voice and the student's voice, and maintaining standards around what's acceptable and what's not.
Wonderful answer. That's exactly what I was going to say. We have these 9 community learning superintendents that should have that autonomous action to be able to do that. And because if the further you push down the decision making and the standards, the better you're going to be able to, the response you're going to be able to have, not only from your principals, but also all the way down to your teachers. And that's going to be, I think, a key thing, rather than having, Superintendent Crystal Hill being that, push that responsibility is further down and give those people, those 9 folks, an autonomous operation for those. And then you use the superintendent, the overall superintendent, to be actually the checker. In other words, to check to make sure that where they can go around and say, oh, hey, I'm hearing a story that this principal at this school is not doing this, and this would go there. So it keeps everybody a little bit nervous that I've got to do my job, and I just can't sit back on my laurels and just, coast along. So that's kind of my answer. Thank you.
Well, Bill, I ain't trying to keep them nervous now.
I think this is a really difficult question to answer, I'll be honest, because I think a lot of the inconsistencies arise from the very different learning environments that make up the various schools within CMS. My kids are in a language magnet program that we absolutely adore, but everything about our school is inconsistent when you compare it to our neighborhood school, which is Shamrock Gardens. So I think the way that you resolve a lot of the inconsistencies is by getting a board put in place that is on the same page. If everyone on the board has the same top level goals and they're all in agreement, now they're not going to necessarily agree about how to accomplish these, and they're going to be different factions, of course, because that's just human nature. But if everyone has the same top level goals, and they work with the superintendent, and the superintendent is empowered by the board to effectuate those goals, then I believe the inconsistencies will begin to dissipate, because you then have a structure in place where the superintendent is empowered and supported. In return, she can empower and support those beneath her, and the messaging becomes consistent. And that's how I would suggest we address those inconsistencies.
Like she said, it's a very hard question you ask, because I really, personally, don't think it's an answer for that question, because in school you have kids that they may have made a D, and the best they're gonna do is a C. Sometimes when the school starts, RGKL might be here with their learning. Philip O'Berry might be here. You got other schools that might be there. Do we gauge them off of RGKL, or do we gauge them off of where they started at, and at the end of the year, check their numbers and see what their success is? Because your success might be 1,100 on the SAT. Mine might be, best I can do is a 600. Do that make you better? Or if I take it again to make a 700, I did better. So I feel that each school needs to be addressed with their own issues and not pit them against other schools, because it's not fair, because economics somewhere is not the same as this. 2-parent households opposed to 1-parent household. Having something to eat tonight opposed to having nothing to eat tonight. A drug user for a parent opposed to a parent that never used drugs. Kids in schools are put in different situations, so you can't expect the same results across the board. It's not life.
Did everyone get the chance to answer that question? Okay, we have to be out of this building at 10 o'clock, and so there's no way we can ask another question and give everybody a chance to answer. So we're going to end right here, okay? So I want to thank you all for coming. For those of you that I didn't get your question, I'm so sorry, but the time has absolutely run out, and we cannot go over.
The only thing I will say is right now, I've been impressed. I'll stay to have them.
But we can't stay in this room.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll go outside.
That's the thing. We can't stay in this
I'll
room.
go outside.
Okay. Yeah. And if you all don't mind staying around, you can stay outside, but this room is the issue, okay? So, thank you so much for coming, and we appreciate it.
Thank you. That's a great answer. I think you got some great answers.
Wait a minute, please, hold on just a minute, we have an announcement.
I'd like to announce that the superintendent's town hall meeting is tonight, starting high school, 6 to 7:30 p.m. As many of you can, please attend that town hall meeting.
Okay, I have an announcement also. Today is National Voter Registration Day. It's very, very important that you check your registration, make sure you're up to date, and take also register someone. Advocate for voting. Another announcement. Okay, quickly.
This Saturday on West Straight Street at the West End Complex, a Vibe Call Fresh is a festival for home ownership. So if you can make it, we'd love to see you.
Yes, please come. It's great fun. I've been there.